State of Ohio has been in a wait-and-see mode on the federal health care law, with the state insurance commissioner a vocal critic of it this past year. To discuss what happens now, we welcome Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor. Welcome back to Capitol Square.
Thank you.
Governor, good to see you. Describe the first minute. There was chaos, there was media chaos, there was obviously conflicting information, but describe that first 60 seconds when you finally realized that Chief Justice John Roberts, a conservative, had sided with the 4 liberal justices and voted to uphold this federal health care law.
Well, actually, I was in the car driving to Springfield, Ohio. I had a meeting there to get to before we could meet in the office in Columbus. So I think we all individually were trying to process the decision. Of course, there was the confusion at the outset about whether or not the bill would be overturned. And so we were prepared for any one of, I guess, one of the 3 outcomes.
This one the most surprising one?
In some way it was. I think that, clearly we believe that the court got it wrong. We believe that, of course, under the Commerce Clause is what they said, it would not be constitutional. It is, in fact, the individual mandate constitutional as a tax. Some are saying the largest tax increase in our history. It is no doubt a massive tax increase on all Americans, including the middle class. So I think from that perspective, it's what many Republicans had said all along. This is a tax.
How'd the governor react? You obviously spoke to him. I mean, what was the initial reaction?
We had similar reactions, and we did speak. We certainly sat in a briefing with the governor and senior staff for some time to process this. We're concerned about the additional cost to Ohio. We've got some believe that because of the way they ruled on Medicaid, there wouldn't be any additional mandatory spending at the state level. Well, that's just not the case. In fact, in 14 and 15, we're going to have to spend another $940 million on Medicaid. The governor and I have been working so hard to get Ohio back on the right path, helping jobs be created in the state by creating a great economic climate or environment, and we have the wind at our face now.
The state is due to create this state healthcare exchange. If you don't do that, the federal government will do it for you. What are the pros and cons there, and which way are you leaning? Will you now kind of lead the charge to create this state-based exchange, healthcare exchange?
We've spent the last 18 months looking at our core values, which are available on the OH Office of Health Transformation website, and comparing those core values to the mandates under Obamacare. Quite frankly, our conclusion was they don't match. We cannot be true to our core values and meet our goals and comply with the Obamacare mandates. Therefore, we are today leaning towards letting the federal government set up and run the exchange.
If you expand Medicaid eligibility to 133%, as I understand it, that additional 600,000 Ohioans,
nearly 400,000.
400,000 additionally, but the federal government picks up that tab, at least in the short term, right? 100% of that cost. Why wouldn't that be a good idea?
That is, in fact, the case, that, yes, they will pick it up at least in the first 2 years. The problem is we can't make decisions based on the short term. For too long, that's been happening in Ohio, which is why we had an $8 billion budget shortfall. So we have to make decisions based on the long term, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years out, and not saddle future generations with additional debt and burdens because the federal government makes a promise it doesn't keep down the road.
I was talking to some legal healthcare attorneys yesterday who said that you and the governor might attempt to run out the clock here and see how the election plays out. I do want to put up this quote, though, from Mitt Romney, and I think you'll know where I'm going with this, but this is Governor Mitt Romney, who says, with regards to the individual mandate, the individual responsibility program that I proposed, that is essential for bringing the health care costs down for everyone and getting everyone the health insurance they need. That was the governor back in 2006 when he was advocating this personal responsibility tax, basically because Republicans at that time very concerned about emergency room costs, which is still a big issue today, that somehow you had to get in front of those. That's the Mitt Romney of 2006. Was he wrong then?
I think that what he's saying and what he said then and what he's saying today is that this is a state responsibility. States need to have the flexibility to deal with these important issues in the way that's best for their state. And health insurance is unique in each state, and the environment's unique. Ohio has a competitive market today, and therefore we do have lower health premiums. We don't have massive mandates on individuals and insurance companies, but because of Obamacare now, we have all these additional mandates that's ultimately going to drive up the cost to every consumer in Ohio. This is a state issue, and states should have the flexibility to deal with it, not be forced to comply with a federal mandate.
Interestingly, though, because of issue 3 last fall, that was overwhelmingly supported by the people of Ohio, 67%, a Romney type of health care program in Massachusetts would not be possible here.
Well, in Ohio, we have a unique environment, and it's not necessary. We have a competitive health insurance market. We're not, because of Obamacare, we're not able to continue with the reforms we started in Medicaid and the reforms in health care, which is ultimately what you have to do, drive down the cost of health care and ultimately start driving down the cost of insurance. So we don't have that environment. That wouldn't be necessary in Ohio.
1.5 million people uninsured, though. I mean, what's the plan to get them covered?
Well, again, for the last 18 months, we've been working with our policy staff at the Department of Insurance, and we were prepared or will be prepared to roll out some proposals. Of course, we need to go back and look at those now, since Obamacare obviously will stand. But we understand the need for some solution pre-existing conditions, some solution for the uninsured population, and so you will hear more from us in the coming months about that.
There are some good elements of this, right? I mean, the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, as an example, sent out a press release right away saying at least we now know, the business community can be calm now, because at least we now know that this law is indeed constitutional and we can proceed. And the law does cover pre-existing conditions, things that have been registering popular in polls. There are some good elements. Do you see good elements in the Affordable Care Act?
Here's my concern. I was in, I think it was Marion, Ohio, for example. There's a gentleman who owns a couple Denny's restaurants. And today he was not able to offer health insurance to his employees because of the cost. But he said to me, if there is good in this bill, let me tell you what's going to happen to me. If I don't offer the insurance, I have to pay the penalty. If I pay the penalty, it isn't going to be enough of a cost to put me out of business. So is it good to have certainty if your certainty is that you'll no longer be in business? If your certainty is I'm going to have to lay off employees, or I can't hire or invest in a new technology because I have all of these additional taxes that this particular bill will push down to every American. And so I think you have to ask about, is that certainty good?
Do you think, and I just want to go back and I would want to clarify something here, it is unlikely then that Ohio will develop this healthcare exchange. The federal government will be doing that for the state of Ohio.
At this point, it is unlikely we would have a state-based exchange.
One last question, kind of philosophical. As we look back, we've been around politics a long time. Many Republicans did not support Social Security or Medicare. In fact, up until 10 years ago or 15 years ago, a lot of Republicans, I remember Newt Gingrich saying that he wanted Medicare to wither on the vine. Do you think there's a potential here that 10 years from now, Americans will look back and have grown to like this health care program, much in the same way of Social Security and particularly Medicare, that they like the elements of it and they like the fact that all of us are pitching in, and maybe those emergency room costs will have come down at that point? Do you think Republicans take a risk on this issue?
I believe that the trillions of dollars in taxes that are going to be paid by Americans over the next 10 years to support this bill is unsustainable. And I think that it is just another program that we can't continue to provide rich benefits and pay for. We have to look at entitlement reform across the board, and so we're adding a new program that quite frankly is not sustainable. As these new taxes come into force and Ohioans and Americans start paying new taxes, I think we're all going to come to a conclusion that there's a better solution. We can deal with our health care costs and health insurance cost issues. This is not the solution, and that's what I believe is going to happen in the course of the next 10 years.
You know what? When big issues happen nationally or in Ohio, Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor, you're always available for Capitol Square. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim.
See you soon.